appreciation, and also to their families.
I will, sir.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Senator Wicker. Senator McCaskill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me obviously comment on the sacrifice that both of you are making and the thousands of other men and women like you that are working on behalf of our country in Iraq. Let me also mention the 76 Missourians who have, and their families who have paid the ultimate sacrifice. I'd like to focus a minute on the financial sacrifice of our country. It is a burr in the saddle of the American people that the Iraqi government has a budget surplus and we have a massive budget deficit, and yet we are paying and they are not. And I'd like to focus in on the SOFA agreement for you, Ambassador Crocker, and for you, General Petraeus. I'd like to focus in on the Sons of Iraq. The Sons of Iraq is one of your charts today, and the success that you have had related to employing some 90,000 Sunnis with American tax dollars.
She as well as Sunni.
Excuse me, Shia and Sunni, but primarily Sunni.
It's about 20% Shia and about 80% or so
Okay.
Sunni.
The 80% of, they are viewed as primarily a Sunni group in regards to the politics in Iraq. And that's the point I want to make, is that we're spending about $200 million a year paying these people twice the average salary you would make in Iraq. And I'm trying to figure out how we get the Iraqi government to pay that price as opposed to the American taxpayer. Obviously, there was a quote in the Washington Post not long ago from one of these Sons of Iraq that said that they were late in getting their money, and if they're going to be patient, but if they don't get their money quickly, we'll go back, we'll suspend and quit, and then we'll go back to fighting Americans. So we have, you know, paid these folks, and they are not fighting us. But the question is, how long are we going to be paying them in order to keep them from fighting us? And what chances do we have of making the Iraqi government using some of their budget surplus to fight them? And for you, Ambassador Crocker, in Japan and Korea and Germany, which has been referenced in political circles as to our involvement in Iraq long term, in our agreements there, they are offsetting the cost of our bases. Those countries are paying the American government to offset some of the costs of our bases. Are you going to negotiate in the SOFA that the Iraqi government start offsetting some of the costs of our temporary bases that is envisioned that are going to become theirs if and when we ever get out of there?
Senator, on the Sons of Iraq, as I mentioned in my opening statement, we actually fund those with the SERP, and in fact the Iraqi government just allocated $300 million for us to manage as Iraqi SERP, which in fact will offset a number of our other projects and allow us in fact to focus more on the Sons of Iraq, for which they have committed now $163 million to gradually assume their contracts, over $500 million for small business loans that can be applied to some of these, and nearly $200 million for a training, education, and reintegration program. So there are a number of initiatives actually ongoing with the Iraqi government, in addition to the absorption of, again, 20–30%, we'll have to see how much it is over time, of the Sons of Iraq into the legitimate Iraqi security forces, either into local police or in some cases into the Iraqi army. This started in Anbar province, and in fact, that's where we have been most advanced in terms of moving them onto the rolls. It's much more challenging, I think understandably so, as you mentioned, primarily a Sunni organization, particularly at the outset, because of course we needed them in areas where Al-Qaeda was originally, which were, these were Sunni areas. And when they moved into locations such as in Baghdad neighborhoods, where we saw the awakening take place in some of those neighborhoods, then you're near Shia-Sunni fault lines. You have much more concern, I think, legitimately on the part of a Shia-led government. They've worked their way through that. There were recently several thousand who were picked up on contract and then transitioned into the Iraqi security forces. So that process is underway, and I think we are seeing more and more and more burden sharing, cost sharing, if you will, and they have committed that they would provide more as their own supplementals are addressed over the course of the next several months.
Senator, the SOFA talks, as you know, are just getting underway, and I believe this committee, among others, will be receiving a briefing in the near future. It's an interesting point. We'll need to take that aboard and see what might be possible.
I think it's tremendously important, Ambassador, that we make a good faith effort to begin to force the Iraqi government to start spending their money to support the bases, the temporary bases that we have in Iraq. There's no excuse that the people of Japan and Germany and Korea are helping pay, and the people of Iraq need to be doing the same thing. And if they refuse to, I think that would be a very illuminating point for the American people. If they're not willing to help pay for that which we have said will be theirs when we leave, then I think that would be a very interesting moment of recognition, I think, for Americans as to how we are actually viewed in the country of Iraq. Let me also just briefly get your take on the Basra situation. I mean, it is my understanding, and I don't think most Americans have, this hasn't really been, I think, distilled down for most Americans, that really Sadr won politically in terms of the confrontation in Basra, that their willingness to do reconciliation was being played from a winning hand, not from a losing hand, and that this was about the political power of Maliki versus Sadr, and that he won, not Maliki, but that it was really one of these moments where Maliki could not deliver any kind of crushing blow to Sadr, and that they really, that JAM really stood down because they had done the political damage they needed to do to Maliki. Is that incorrect?
Senator, I would actually give it a different reading. What we've seen since the events in Basra is very broad-ranging political support in Iraq for Maliki. I had mentioned in response to a previous question that last Saturday a group called the Political Council for National Security, this is a body that includes the President, the two Vice Presidents, Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, Speaker and Deputy Speakers of Parliament, and leaders of all the parliamentary blocs, met and came out with a strong statement of support for the government, and there were 15 points, but the most important were support for the government in its fight against extreme militia groups, a call for the disbanding of all such groups, and a strong statement calling on outsiders to cease interfering in Iraq's affairs, a clear reference to Iran. So this is still a process in evolution, but the way I would read it right now is that it has definitely strengthened support for Maliki as he is perceived as prepared to go into action against extremist Shia as well as Al-Qaeda and others.
Well, I appreciate that there is some support for Maliki, but you know, is it completely wrong to say that in terms of the actual incidents that occurred in Basra, that Sadr ended up with a stronger hand than Maliki at the end of the